Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Monday, the 6th of December. This morning, I'd like to share with you a little bit from a book called Grounded, Finding God in the World, A Spiritual Revolution by Diana Butler Bass. This is a book that I read for about 10 minutes every morning when I'm doing my daily office. It's a book I sincerely wish I could just sit down and read over for a couple of hours and read the whole book, but it's part of my daily ritual to sit down and spend 10 quality minutes reading slowly and absorbing something over a long period of time rather than crashing through something and missing things. So today I'd like to share with you something that I read this morning. It's about empathy. And first of all, I'd like to just share with you the textbook definition of empathy, which is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So it's not sympathy or feeling sorry for something, but to be able to understand and share the feelings of another. Okay, so she's talking about practicing empathy. And she states here that in December 2014, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton addressed an audience at Georgetown University regarding women, politics, and conflict resolution. The speech seemed fairly standard Washington fare until she got to one section in which she suggested that having empathy for one's enemies is a form of power. This is what we call smart power, using every possible tool and partner to advance peace and security, leaving no one on the sidelines, showing respect even for one's enemies, trying to understand and insofar as psychologically possible, empathize with their perspective and point of view, helping to define the problems, determine the solutions. That is what we believe in the 21st century will change the prospects for peace. And she says, the author goes on to say, empathy is essentially the capacity to see others as you see yourself, the golden rule in practice. It is how we love our neighbors, the way to participate in the spiritual revolution. But it's hard to do. And she goes on to talk about the responses to that other people, other politicians were very angry about that. Like people saying that that's the thing you do is we fight our enemies, we don't empathize with them. And she goes on to say again, and that is what empathy is, entering into the lives of others so that the world becomes alive, a real neighborhood that is community. Community has become a big thing for me lately. It could be because I lived in Halifax for 7 years and became a part of the community, a part of the ecumenical community, a part of the church world, a part of the neighborhood. And I've never lived anywhere 7 years in my life. The most I had was 5. So that sense really of being a part of a community long enough that you become known by your neighbors and the businesses and the people, and they can count on you and call you up, becoming a part of a community, and then leaving that to go to Petawawa or Round Lake for only 1 year, and then coming here into COVID, where we've been here for just over a year. But community is so hard to come by when you can't. We're not encouraged to be in community. We're encouraged really to stay work from home and stay on your own. So that sense of empathy, which I think empathy is like a discipline. It's something we have to practice. And it's hard to exercise empathy when you're not with other people, when you have no other community to be with. And so this sense of recognizing and understanding someone else's position or their context or what's happening in their lives is so important. It is so very important. When we look at the world around us, if we look globally, it seems so overwhelming to think that we should and could empathize with other people, whether it's other religions or other countries. How do we empathize? Right now with the sort of the back and forth pull with the United States regarding tariffs and the American wanting to sort of grow from home. I understand that. I understand that, wanting to protect your jobs and your people and your own products. I completely understand that. I empathize with that. But at the same time, it's hard for us because it means that we are losing position, we are losing money, we're losing trade, trade benefits and things like that. So I can understand why the people who came after succeeded Hillary Clinton, but also the people who actually came after her, challenged her on her call to empathy on a worldwide stage. I can see why. Because if we empathize with them, then we start to understand how they're feeling, why they're thinking that way. And once we have some understanding, it's a lot harder to judge. It's a lot harder to be hard line about your stance. And that's why they're wrong. When you can understand and recognize, well, if we were in their position, we'd feel the same way. We might even find that in our own positions, we feel the same way. So empathizing with our enemies, or empathizing with other countries or other cultures, writ large over there, someplace else, is so very difficult. Because I don't think it's difficult because the act of empathy is difficult. I think it's difficult because we choose not to. Because it's a choice. Having empathy is a choice to allow our hearts and our minds to broaden, to change, to not be as hard as they were, or as insular, as inward thinking. When we choose empathy, we choose the golden rule. We choose to look at the other and see ourselves and expect that ourselves will be seen in the other. That's a tough decision to make, especially when we want to protect ourselves. But why? If we all run around protecting ourselves, then we can never reach out and help others. If everyone went around helping others, then we wouldn't need to protect ourselves. It's like the chicken and the egg thing. Which comes first? Well, unfortunately, if we expect everybody else to be the one that reaches out the olive branch, that shares that goodwill with us first, and they're thinking the same thing, we'll always be hidden in our little silos, looking out the window to say, well, nobody's come across no man's land yet, so we're going to hunker down and stay here and take care of ourselves, while the world goes to hell in a handbasket, because all this no man's land is still filled with God's creation, God's people. And yet here we are, watching out for only our own. When we all watch out for only our own, we have to be careful, because our own can get smaller and smaller and smaller. The more threatened we feel, the smaller our community becomes. For instance, if I live in Canada, and I feel like the world is ganging up on Canada, and I become very pro-Canada. It's all about Canada. We're going to do only this for Canada. Okay, awesome. This is pro-Canada. We're going to do all of this. However, what happens when we recognize that, wait a minute, the provinces are starting to do the same thing? The provinces are becoming isolated, and we're protecting ourselves. We don't want to be like Quebec or Saskatchewan or BC. Alberta has to be its own thing. We have to protect ourselves. Okay? So we do that. And then all of a sudden, but we're not Edmonton, we're Wainwright. We need to watch out for our interests, because Edmonton's too big. It's going to take care of its own. So then we start watching out for Wainwright, and then we start watching out for our own street, and eventually we start paying attention only to protecting our own household. And what have we got? We have a world that is now filled with individuals looking out windows and being scared, rather than individuals opening up doors and stepping outside and seeking new ways to find community, to look out and say, wait a minute, I know how they feel because I'm feeling the same way. Maybe I'm feeling isolated and alone. Maybe I could reach out to them, and then we could be not isolated and not alone together. Empathy is something that we need to exercise, and Hillary Clinton was right. It is not okay for us to go forward into the world expecting that we have to do so with pain or fear or anxiety. What we need to do is we need to look with empathy on the world and say, together we can create community. Together we can find ways to serve and to be served. We can take care of each other. So I just wanted you to start thinking about empathy today, and maybe as we go through this week, thinking about how we can share empathy with others. I'm going to share empathy with my dog now because the power has gone out and he has started to shake. So we're going to go outside where he can play in the snow and he can feel a little bit more secure until our electricity comes back on and I can do some more work. Have a great day and God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel.